the small Native communities, it's very much, it just happens that personal relationships are developed, and everything that one does in a community tends to have an impact on everybody in that community. So all of the contributions that you've made today, they have a very positive impact on the collection. Dr. Jensen had a very positive impact in the communities that he was in. And in doing that, he was recognized. Not too many people are publicly recognized, but in Southwest Alaska, the elders had a conference, and they decided that they would honor him as an elder. Since then, the Friends of the Museum have identified an elder each year. They've identified somebody that has really contributed to the collection and helped achieve the goals and the mission as needed. And Karen Olivo has been a volunteer. She counts her years of service by salmon bakes. So I believe that this is her 6th salmon bake.
I think it is,
And
yes.
so at this time, I'd like to recognize Karen as our honored elder and thank her publicly with you for all that she has done. She has, all of last summer, she agreed to volunteer Wednesday through Saturday, 10 to 4, to keep the public hours as they were. And now she continues to work in any way that we're needed. She came to the museum as a foster grandparent. So we've been very fortunate that she's continued to stay and helps us to work with the collection. So thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
So she doesn't have to get up. We do have the honored elder certificate. And an appreciation. What Karen does is she reads and she shares all of her knowledge with the visitors so that they're getting the current events. But one of her favorite stories is Two Old Women by Velma Wallace. If you're not familiar with it, these two old women are part of a tribe that, because they were elderly, they were more of a burden than they were a blessing. So the tribe made the decision to leave them while they moved on. So these two old women decided that they were much more valuable than that, and they weren't going to stay there and starve and die like the rest of the people had expected them to do. So it's a story of how they survived and how the rest of the tribe ended up coming back and seeing how wealthy and successful those two old women had been. So that's kind of what Karen, she just keeps on going and giving.
Thank you. And I do want to say thank you to Robin and to everyone that I've worked with. And there's nothing any better than being surrounded by people who love the same thing that you love. And I'm surrounded by people who come in and do taxidermy work to make the animals in good shape, the docents, Crystal and Brandy, and then we have Andrew and Jack and my Andrew, and just all of you who care what happened way back a long time ago in a wonderful land. Thank you,
Karen.
Robin, and thank you all for being here.
So at this point in the program, you've all seen these artifacts that are behind me. These are, we're very blessed to be able to show them to you. They're not part of the collection yet, but they have been, I won't say too much because the donor, Carol Jensen, is here, and I will introduce her and let her say the rest of the story because I think she does it best. So right now we get to hear from Carol and what these things behind us are all about.
As most of you know, Dr. Paul Jensen was an amazing person. I feel so blessed to have had 47 years with him, and I wish it would have been 147. I just don't know how I got so lucky to have such a wonderful father. My dad was a very kind and compassionate and insightful leader who had a passion for educating people and helping them to reach their potential. And he did this not only in the work area, but he did it with his 5 children too. My oldest brother has his doctorate in ministry, and he was a Presbyterian minister in the state of Washington. He's now retired and lives in Mount Vernon, Washington. My second brother got his law degree at University of Washington and worked as a corporate attorney in Seattle. Unfortunately, he has passed away. Then I have my older sister who had a real passion for working in education for children with special education. And she spent many, many years helping children who really needed extra care. And then I have another sister who has her doctorate in counseling, and she was the chair of the counseling department at the University of Alaska at Anchorage and later on in Seattle University. And then there's me. I got my degree in elementary education, taught a few years, then stayed home to raise my children. And then I went back to get my MBA and became a human resources director at nonprofit organizations and at public health clinic. So in many ways, we've carried on Dad's tradition of trying to make the world a better place. And so I just thought you might not know that about Dad because you see one side of him. So I wanted to share a little bit about what our family is too. So, thank you. As the youngest of Dad's children, I had the opportunity to go with my parents to Aleut Pass and to Barrow. All the rest of my siblings were married, and so this was a real blessing for me. It was 1966. I was 18 years old and a sophomore in college, and my mother was working on her master's degree. She wanted to do her thesis on the life of the most remote Eskimo village that we could find, and Dad recommended Aleut Pass. They hadn't had much contact with outsiders, and so he made arrangements for a plane to take us to Aleut Pass. Well, only 2-seater planes go to Aleut Pass, so Dad and the pilot had the 2 seats. And then there was this hammock in the back, and that's where Mom and I were put. No seat belts, nothing. And as we were flying, I remember feeling the air coming through the cracks in the airplane, and I spent my whole time looking down thinking, okay, if the plane goes down here, this is the direction we should go to get to civilization. But as it turns out, we got down at Aleut Pass. They, of course, didn't have any kind of a runway, so we landed in a dried-up riverbed, so it was pretty bouncy. And as soon as we had landed, the entire village came out to see us. That was almost 100 people. And at that time, the village was all sod huts and tents. So that was a pretty exciting place for an 18-year-old. I had such a wonderful time there. Everybody was just bent over backwards to do things for us and to explain what they were doing. And I learned so much about the people there, their lifestyle, and I especially had fun with the children. I played all kinds of games with them, and I even set up a little beauty shop because they liked the curl in my hair. So I set aside half my rollers, and I said I'll do a different curl each evening. And then the next morning I'll brush it out for them. Well, some of them couldn't wait for their turn. So their mothers had these bobby pins, and they would come to me with really tight pin curls all over their hair, and they have very coarse hair, and then they'd ask me to comb it out. And that was a real challenge. You should have seen some of them. They almost looked like afros. So it was an amazing experience. I love going for walks in the tundra, and that's really quite exhausting because it's like walking on a sponge. It's so bouncy that you lose 1/3 of your thrust with every step. So you do get tired out pretty quickly. But it was wonderful going to visit the deep freezes. In other words, it was just a hole in the ground with a ladder, and you could go down inside and